Welcome into the Action Network podcast presented by FanDuel. I am your host, Brendan Glasheen, joined by the usual suspects, Brandon Anderson, Jill Gallant, Luke Swain, a.k.a. Vegas Refund. We've got games coming up Saturday and Sunday, and we look forward to going around 3 picks from each of the guys. This season, the Best Bets pod, good bounce back week in week 14, 5-3-1. After the 2-7 week 13. So we are 67, 55, and 4 for the year. You can find the picks over in the Action Network app, Action Network NFL Picks. You'll have the podcast here as well as the Sunday 6-pack. No buys. Those are over. Everyone's playing. Underdogs at 54%, unders at 56%. We've got 3 favorites of 7 or more, Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles. And that remains the least profitable start for touchdown favorites this year, hitting at just 38% against the spread. These guys have not consulted one another before the picks. I don't even know. So we just go into this and we all have raw reactions. Looking forward to it. There might be some overlap. That happens, but we'll see how it goes. Brandon Anderson usually starts us off, so do so, please. Pick one for week 15.
Well, Brandon, you know I wanted to go back to Seattle Island here, but Thursday night, we're recording Thursday. By the time you listen, our island will already be brimming again, beautifully cashing our green dot tickets. So let's go with the Steelers. We've been playing Steelers a lot lately. I'm going to go back to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh +3 at Carolina. I like the +3. I like the money line too. So here's the case. This line flipped on Sunday. So Carolina was a 2.5-point underdog and then flipped to a 2.5-point favorite. And I feel like that just was an overreaction to both teams here. Carolina got the big win. They beat up on our Seattle Island aforementioned, but they basically just ran the ball right down their throat. They out-physicaled them. And that is not a script that's going to work against the Steel Curtain. That's never a script that has worked against the Steelers, really, my entire lifetime. I think we're overreacting to the Panthers a little bit. Look, yeah, they're in the playoff hunt, sure. They're in the junior league playoff hunt. They're in the get in the hunt for the lose the first round game in a terrible division hunt. The numbers say they haven't really gotten a lot better, even with the Steve Wilkes thing. The defense, pretty solid, has been all year, but it starts out well in the first quarter and gets progressively worse each quarter. They're 31st in DVOA defensively in the second half. So we'll have to be patient here. It might take a bit. But the Steelers are actually better. They're the team whose numbers and profile has actually improved. We've done the whole TJ Watt dance. 6 games with Watt. They rank 3rd on defense, top 5 against the pass and the run. I like the Steelers. It's a better team. I don't mind on the road. We don't know yet who's playing quarterback.
Okay.
Crossing my fingers. I don't really want Mason Rudolph. So as long as we get Pickett or Trubisky, I'll feel much better there. But not really a rah-rah Tomlin underdog spot here. Doesn't quite fit the usual trends, but in that Tomlin underdog spot, after they lose a division game, 6-0 as an underdog, ATS and straight up week 5 forward after that. So it does fit that spot here. And then the other trend I've mentioned, Pittsburgh, after they play that Ravens game, they beat Baltimore. They're only 6-12 ATS. They kind of come out flat, but they lost last week. If they lose to Baltimore, they are 11-5 against the spread the following game. So I like them to come out hot here. I like them to get the win. I can't make Sam Darnold a favorite, not against the Steelers team. That's pretty good. So I'll take Pittsburgh and I'll play the money line +130 as well.
And that Seahawks defense is not very good. So to your point, might be an overreaction to how Darnold performed. No interceptions, and he was scrambling around and looked sort of competent. Kenny Pickett was practicing earlier Thursday, limited with the concussion. Deontay Johnson didn't practice. We'll keep an eye on Freiermuth. He did not practice, but Pickett was out there, which is good news. He was cleared to practice. He was out there in some fashion. Let's go to Jill Gallant, your first pick.
Going to Saturday, Brendan, I'm going to be taking the Bills -7 versus the Dolphins. Pretty confident with this one. Motivation spot for the Bills. They do need the 1 seed in the AFC. They cannot go on the road in another AFC title game. With a win on Saturday, they could pretty much lock up the AFC East, get more ground for the 1 seed over the Chiefs. And part of my fade of the Dolphins is mainly how Tua Tagovailoa performs on the road and in cold weather. So he's played twice in Buffalo. He's lost by 30 in 2020, lost by 15 in 2021. And he's a different quarterback on the road. Part of what makes Tua successful is his accuracy and completion percentage. So he's played 34 career games, 16 on the road, 63% completions on the road, but it increases to 68% at home. That's a huge drop off of 5% comparatively to home to road. His last 2 road games, Niners and Chargers, he threw 61 passes. He only completed 28 of them, 3 touchdowns that were all long ball. I mean, you could even say that Trent Sherfield touchdown against the Niners was fluky. I'm not willing to say that the Tyreek Hill touchdowns were fluky, but 2 interceptions in those games. And his career spread record, I find, reflects this: 12-4 against the spread at home, 6-9-1 against the spread in road games. I don't think it's a coincidence that all 5 of his interceptions this season have been in road games. Now, from a cold weather standpoint, in the NFL, Tua has never started a game in the temperatures in the 30s. It's expected to be pretty cold in Buffalo on Saturday. He started 3 games at just around 50 degrees, and the Dolphins are 0-3 straight up and against the spread in those games, and they average just around 14 points per game. So give me the Bills to roll the Dolphins and win comfortably on Saturday.
Okay, and you got Mike McDaniel rocking the sweatshirt at practice that he wishes it was colder while he has sleeves on. Like, interesting. He should be in short sleeves if he's going to wear a sweatshirt like that. And it also feels like this Dolphins offense, have they been figured out? Did the Niners lay a blueprint going forward? Chargers seem to follow that. We'll find out if Buffalo does the same. Let's go to Luke. First pick for us.
So my first one's going to be Colts plus 4.5 at the Vikings on Saturday,
Okay.
which this is going to be a Colts team that, I mean, that was like I think was it last Sunday night or Thursday when they got absolute beat down by the Cowboys, where that game was
33-0 in the fourth quarter. That was a few Sundays ago. Yep.
Where that game, it was close until that fourth quarter, which just went totally off the rails. And this game feels eerily similar to me to the Jets game 2 weeks ago against the Vikings. And I think every expert you probably hear across the media is just, it's like a broken record bashing the Vikings being the lucky team. Sorry, Brandon. So I won't even get into that, even though it does have a reason. I think we're at the point where like the Vikings like luck factor has like leveled off, where we're not getting numbers that are outrageous to us anymore. But like 2 weeks ago, which is probably it was just like the worst beat in terms of like experience ever, that Jets game, which the Jets had they do have an elite defense. And they were just missing a couple pieces specifically at running back, where they couldn't convert in the red zone, where this Colts defense, I don't want to say it's the Jets defense, but it is a very above average team, where that defense is going to be the best unit in this game against a Vikings offense that I think they can contain, where I trust Matt Ryan enough to stay within this number. I think if they cover, they probably win. But Saturday game, 4.5 is just too much to me against a Colts defense that's great and a Vikings defense that can make a Colts offense look better than it actually is.
If you look at our Action Network luck rankings that Sean Kerner and Nick Giffen put together, Vikings are the second luckiest team in football. And as Luke laid out, they've got a -1 point differential through 13 games. But what jumps out is the Colts are the 28th luckiest team, which means they aren't very lucky. So, and it also facing pressure. You talked about the Jets defense. Matt Ryan may actually not be all that bad because the Vikings don't put too much pressure on the quarterback.
Settle down.
You're right. I mean, remember the days here doing this podcast where Jill was giving out Matt Ryan to throw an interception at plus money? Or those days are
He's
over.
the second most profitable quarterback to throw interceptions this year behind Dak Prescott. But still, regardless, he throws a lot of interceptions.
By the way, Matt Ryan, after the bye week, as he is here, 9-5 against the spread. Kirk Cousins facing an opponent coming off the bye week when they had a little extra time to prep for him with that good defense, 2-8 against the spread. So I hate to admit it, but I'm with you on Colts on this one. I think it's the right side.
See, Jill, it's all paving way for Matt Ryan to give us another, and it's on a Saturday. Looking forward to it to start the slate. Let's go back to Brandon. Your second pick, please.
Yeah, well, I like the Bills pick. I like the Colts pick. Let's wind out our Saturday with one more pick in the game in the middle. I'm going to take the Ravens +3 in Cleveland a rivalry game, right? These teams hate each other. Ravens, Browns, rivalry. There's no rivalry here. The Ravens have won 24 of the last 29. They own this rivalry. This is like big brother, little brother, except little brother is like a 4-year-old and big brother is 17 and they're playing basketball on the court backyard. Like the Ravens own this matchup. And I think that the line here is still trying too hard to reflect quarterback perception that has not really played out. I think we did this one on the hot read, and the line hasn't moved a lot because of the quarterback uncertainty with Baltimore. But Deshaun Watson, we've talked more than we really want to on this podcast about him. He's just not been good. The Browns in 8 quarters with Watson so far have scored 16 offensive points. 2 points a quarter is not going to get the job done, especially for an offense that honestly was really good for the whole rest of the season, right up until they put a new quarterback into the mix, and they're not so good anymore. The run game has faltered. He's not passing well. On the other side, we took the hot read, hoping maybe we'll get Lamar Jackson here. That looks pretty unlikely at this point. But the good news, thankfully, is Tyler Huntley, who was hurt Sunday. He's practicing. He looks good to go. I did want to make sure we got Huntley in there. I don't need any, Brett Hundley, the other version of Huntley, or Anthony Brown, whoever it is. But look, Tyler Huntley is fine. He's played now in 7 games. He's featured prominently in 7 games. All 7 games have been within 3 points. Well, we're +3. That looks pretty good for us here. And I think with Huntley in there, you get the Harbaugh underdog script, 17-7-1 ATS as a division underdog. Both teams are going to run the ball here. It's Cleveland. It's December. Ravens want to run. J.K. Dobbins is back. The Browns want to run. The difference here is who's stopping the run. Not the Browns. They haven't stopped the run all season. They're third to last in run defense. The Ravens, since trading for Roquan Smith, #1 run defense and #4 overall by DVOA. So I love the run defense for Baltimore. Just going to be one of those ugly dog pound, slow, close, low scoring, run the ball. And if you got that ugly defense, run the ball script, you always want the Ravens and John Harbaugh in that matchup against the Browns here. Watson, not a good favorite. Kevin Stefanski, not a good division favorite. 1-7 against the spread. So I'll take the Ravens. I like the +3.
Okay, tickets coming in on Baltimore, but the money coming in on Cleveland -3.
This game could have been so electric where if Deshaun was playing good and we had Lamar, it would have been awesome on Saturday. But
I think what we're finding out, and Brandon said this, that the week he came back, when you haven't played football in 700 days, this feels like, okay, get your feet wet, get in my system. Kevin Stefanski will lead you along, but this is a wait till next year kind of team. If anything, if they turn it around, I would like to think they do. Yeah, I don't know that we have decided Deshaun Watson is a terrible football player now. We have not learned that in 2 weeks. We've learned that it's really hard to just join a different system. Jacoby Brissett is a very different quarterback, different skill set. So the Browns, they're the team that they put on the very last graphic in the corner of the playoff graphics on your screen. They're not in the race. They could make a run, but this is all about next year. But for now, we can still bet against it. Luke, do you disagree?
No, not at all. Deshaun has not met expectations, but I don't think he played all that poorly on Sunday.
Fair.
Relative to perception.
Well, and just look at their next 3 after this week. Saints, they can be a decent defense from week to week. The Commanders on the road, and the Steelers. There's no layup there. The Texans was the layup game. In Cincinnati, Baltimore, it's not an easy stretch by the imagination. And even the weeks before that, Bills, Tampa, those are all decent top half of the league defenses. Jill,
it's tough. I feel really bad for Deshaun Watson. It's tough out there.
I was not. Jill, go.
All right. Speaking of somebody who looks like they haven't played in 700 days, I am going to use this opportunity to fade the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. I'm fading the GOAT. I apologize, Brendan. I apologize, Luke. I know that he is probably on a poster in your wall somewhere, but I am taking Bengals -3.5. Brady looks 45. And now part of it is, the system, the lack of weapons in the slot, up the seam, really noticeable this year. And all you have to do is just look at his pass attempts per game, which is just around his age. He's actually averaging 44.5 passing attempts per game. That's the most of his career. And the most previous to that was last year when it was 42 attempts per game. The difference is he threw for 42 touchdown passes, had, a Gio Bernard in the slot, a Gronkowski up the seam. This season, he's on pace for 25 passing touchdowns. That'll be the lowest since 2013. On the flip side, the Bucs defense not really doing him many favors. In his first 2 seasons with the Bucs, they were the gold standard for defense versus the run. They ranked top 5 in rush yards, touchdowns allowed both seasons. This year, they're middle of the pack in rushing yards. They've already allowed more rushing touchdowns this year than they did all of last year. Now, on the other side of the field, you've got the Bengals playing arguably the best in the AFC right now. 5 straight wins and covers. They're starting actually to take care of Joe Burrow. He's not getting sacked as much. During those 5 games, he's only been sacked 6 times. The first 8 games of the year, he was 29 sacks. So made a huge difference here. I just think this is a bad matchup for the Bucs. I thought this line was going to be around -4. It may go to -4 by kickoff. There are some trends as well from our Evan Abrams that I think support this. Bucs are now 1-9-1 against the spread in their last 11 games. They've faced the AFC 4 times this year. They are 0-4 straight up and against the spread. 3 of those games were against the AFC North, and they did not cover any of those games. As for the Bengals, they are 17-3 against the spread in their last 20 games overall. To me, you got to take the Bengals here.
When was, I think, the game against Kansas City early in the year? Tampa was, they were favored in that game. Have they been a home dog all season? I don't know that for sure, but playing Kansas City, they were a short favorite in that game, if I remember back now, early October. So this is their first spot this year. Say it again.
Yes, they were.
They were. Okay. So that's the first spot this year for Tampa, and maybe since Brady's been there. But there's no signs of encouragement from that team. I don't blame you whatsoever. So you're not breaking my heart. I won't speak for Jill or for Luke, but I tend to agree. Luke, go ahead. Your second best bet.
So my second one is going to be – they put me through a lot of pain the last 2 weeks on both sides. But I'm going to go with the Jets +1 right now on FanDuel, hosting the Lions, which we have Jared Goff kind of going into a perfect storm where he is totally the quarterback that he needs a couple things. He needs to be in a good environment, like indoors on turf. He needs an offensive line, and he needs to go against a coach that doesn't have the blueprint against him, where Jared Goff could be great if he just avoids Belichick. So the trend here is small sample size. I'm not giving him the Belichick angle, but Saleh is 4-0 against Goff in the 4 games that he's been defensive coordinator or head coach against him. Well, defensive coordinator only, actually, I would think. But and then he's going against a Jets defense that their defensive line brings pressure every single play. Pressure is his Achilles heel. He's been behind the Lions offensive line that has been making life really comfortable back there for him all season. In a weather atmosphere that is going to be sub 35 degrees, and Goff in games that are sub 35 degrees, shout out Casey Halpern, he has never had a positive EPA per play. So Goff is on the road after being at home 4 games in a row in a cold game against a coach that's beat him 4 times, against a Jets defense that is the elite, in my opinion, where the Lions is just another peak market expectation game. We're going to be fading them right now, where they were +2.5 at the Bears and they were +3 at the Giants. And if you're telling me that they should be favored at the Jets, I just don't think that's true. I think the Jets should honestly be -2 at the very least. So I'm just going to basically take the Jets and pick them. And Quinn Williams is kind of key, but they do have depth. So I'll just take them and basically pick them.
Okay, very good. Jared Goff has been good against the number, playing in the 1 p.m. window. Evan Abrams has him at 26-13. That's his, according to his data, covering 6 in a row this year. But the way they've played the last 2 weeks, folks are starting to maybe go the other way. At least you're going to go the other way. And not to mention, Mike White did say today he will play in this game. Confirmed. He was dealing with the rib injury this week, but he will play for the Jets as the quarterback. Final bet from each of the guys. Let's go to Brandon.
Yeah, what a world where we're in December on the home stretch and Jets Lions is the game of the week. Like I'm legitimately excited to watch that coin flip game, but I'm also worried that it's a sign of the apocalypse perhaps coming. I'm going to go to a game that I'm not excited to watch that Jill and Brendan will be watching just going into our next podcast on Sunday night. I'm going to go to Commanders Giants, and I'm going to take the under here, under 40.5. So I had this play 2 weeks ago. It actually was my last cut before the pod, but I had it on the app. And if you remember, the 40.5 was a wild ride. We're at 33 points late. Washington has a late drive, gets the touchdown, 20-20. We're going to overtime at 40 points. I'll do the math for you. And I believe we had like 5 punts and then a missed 700-yard field goal to end the game in a tie and hit our under 40.5 that we had all the way. So I only feel like it's fair to roll it over and take the money from that 40.5 and just go right back to the well 2 weeks later. That only seems fair to the gambling gods. It's the same play and it's the same angle. Here's why. Washington is number 6 in pressure rate. The Giants are 5th worst in pass protection. So that's going to make the passing game tough. And then the same thing on the other side. The Giants are number 3 in pressure rate defensively. And Washington's also near the bottom in pass blocking. So that neuters both passing games. We got a Washington game here, outdoors, looking at
Sorry. I love that neuters. That was a great adjective. Sorry.
We got a Washington game here. So outdoors in December, we're looking at in the 30s and windy. So probably the weather's going to be a factor. So basically we got teams are going to run the ball a lot. We're going to have a fast script. Washington, top 5 against the run on the season, top 5 defense overall the last 6 weeks. Giants run game fading. I just don't see a lot of points here. I see us having a nice wind down and a nice easy block of time to prepare for a podcast on Sunday night. Washington games are under 40.5, 9 of the last 11 games here. And then if you look at week 14 and forward division games, done a couple of these trends. I mentioned the outdoors factor. Outdoors games hit the under 91, 56, and 4 to the under 62%. And then if you got a home favorite of under 7, 57% to the under in those late season division games. And I think the line's going to fall, that it's been teetering. There are some 40s out there already. So I'm going to grab the 40.5, but another trend for you. If we get down to 40, primetime unders, excluding Monday night, which this will be the Sunday night game, if they're a 36-40 total, 40 and 20 to the under, 67% rate there. So I like the 40.5. And if we dip a little bit, the trends like it even more. I think it's too many points for the Giants, but I don't want to side on this. Just give me the under.
And I mean, I think the general consensus was the public was pretty disappointed when they flexed this game to Sunday night, where like in terms of all of the games this week, this is the most important game for each team by far. Like basically the loser is out of the playoff picture, I want to say, or like
close,
a lot. Yeah, I think they're like 2 games back. Yeah, where like the more important games, no matter what the sport is, usually results in a more conservative game plan, which plays right into this under.
I'm a fan of this.
I'm rooting for another 20-20 tie, not just to hit our under, but get those ties out of the standings. They screw with all the tiebreakers. Get a tie and a tie basically just means they each got 1 win and 1 loss. Get even us back out there. So, and I think it just kills off both of them.
Has there ever been a tie in a divisional game where they're playing a second time?
I not in my lifetime.
I'd love to know how that works.
I'm a big fan of this because I'll be out in Vegas for Patriots Raiders. When they flexed that game to 1:00, I was like, great. Well, 1:00 local time, that is. Plenty of time to get to the airport for the red-eye flight home. And can enjoy myself afterwards. So I'm a fan of the time change, as a matter of fact. Unders have been popular for the Commanders, 8-2-1 to the under since week 3, and they are 15-5-1 to the under in their last 21 home games. These two teams since week 3 have actually been the most profitable under teams. Brandon, also, I think we just talked about this, but also I would imagine you trust Ron Rivera to scheme it up defensively off a bye and playing the same team again.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird spot. Yeah, where this is literally the last team that they played. The Giants had to play the Eagles in between, right, which is a very unique team to play. It's a team that tires you out the way that they're running.
They just got pasted. Like they just got their butts kicked.
They did. So yeah, it's an advantageous spot. I think that's why the line is a little off of what we might expect otherwise here, because basically Washington schemed all week for this game and then had 2 more weeks to take what they learned and do it again. So yeah, I think even if Washington, that's why I don't want the side. I'll take the under because the Washington defense is the best unit anyway. So that gives us a few outs that way.
Okay, good stuff. Jill, last best bet for week 15.
Okay. Under 36.5 for the Cardinals Broncos. Now, last week, Brendan, you viciously and I don't know, maybe unintentionally called me a coward. But I think you've come around now that my Broncos, mine, have covered that plus 9.5 last week. But my love.
And they covered against the Ravens, plus 8.5.
This is true. But my love, though, short-lived, because this might be the worst game of the NFL season. Like, I'm running projections trying to find where the points are coming up. I'm lining these teams up. I can't find it. Like, neither of these teams are competent offensively. Now, the one thing that helps is that the Broncos, top 5 in points allowed per game, do have a pretty strong defense, but last in points scored per game. Perfect recipe for an under. All Broncos games this season have an average combined score of 33.2 points per game. And there are a few 60-point combined scores sprinkled in there, so you can imagine what the other games looked like. Now, Brett Ripien might be the worst quarterback in the NFL. I would say the only competition is the Trevor Siemian, Nathan Peterman poo-poo platter that they got in Chicago, but I think Brett Ripien is right there. Now, the last time he started a game was against the Jets. He threw 45 times. He couldn't even get over 220 passing yards. No passing touchdowns. The Broncos lose 16-9. On the flip side, you've got the Arizona Cardinals. You've got Colt McCoy. Doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence. He's thrown 4 passing touchdowns in his last 11 appearances as a quarterback with the Cardinals. And there's a ton of under trends as well when the totals get set this low. Unders at 37 or below since 2016 are 16-8 to the under. 12 of the last 15 totals at 37 or below have gone under by an average of 6.1 points per game. And Denver is also part of this trend. 2 of their games were part of this trend, and both of those games went under. Now, Cliff Kingsbury, 20-10 to the under on the road. I'm not going to weigh that trend as much. This is more of a just take 0. Like, if you could take 0 points for the Denver Broncos, I would consider it. And the Broncos kicker also has a thigh injury. Might not even be able to make kicks past 50 yards. So give me the under 36.5 for Broncos Cardinals this weekend.
You know, I wonder that the folks look at this game and they're just like, there's too much talent. There's still too much talent, but the coaches screw this up so well. They're so good at it. Look at Kingsbury Monday night, the fumble by Hopkins, the mistakes they've made. Now, I thought they were going to run the ball pretty well on the Patriots, but maybe it's just a kudos to their talent, why the number is as high as you think it is. But the mistakes that these coaches make from a scheme standpoint, it's glaring. These are 2 teams we've been all over, Brandon, this year.
Yeah, by the way, Jill, I got great news for you. I got an early Christmas present.
Oh,
if you like this Broncos under, just get ready. I slacked you this yesterday, but just so our listeners can hear, Broncos Rams, Christmas afternoon. I was getting ready for the look ahead. We'll get there in a minute. The look ahead total on Broncos Rams is 35.5 right now. We have not had a total below 35 since November 2012. And we might be headed that way. Merry Christmas, NFL fans.
Man, that's like Army Navy low.
Yeah. Take that present and just take it from under the tree and just throw it directly in the fire. Like, that's the type of present that is.
That is insulting. That total. But it makes sense. Okay, Luke, take us home. Last best bet.
All right. So my last one's going to be Jags plus 4.5 hosting the Cowboys, which the Cowboys are coming off 3 straight home games. And their strength of schedule, not strong. In terms of like non-divisional games, they've only had 2 firsts with a winning record so far. So like, you have a Cowboys team that I will say it might be a little bit of like a bounce back spot for them coming off of that Texans near loss. And we might be getting the Jags at like high market expectations in terms of like perception. But one thing that can offset that perception is America's team, no matter who they're playing. And that now they're going into Jacksonville, which we've talked about on this podcast. Weird things happen in Jacksonville. They got people swimming in the stands, like just
That's
weird
right.
stuff happens. Going like this Jags team is just surging. Trevor Lawrence is playing like the pick that everyone thought he was going to be. He's been great against pressure. He's made plays happen. And this Cowboys team just runs the ball when they shouldn't be running the ball. And I do think this Jags defense is good enough, at least better than what like the teams that they've been playing of recent runs defense has been providing. And this Jags defense, I think, can hold them in check. And I think the Jags are very live in this spot. So I'll take the Jags plus 4.5.
Okay, very good. Anyone have thoughts on that one before we wrap? I mean, the money's coming in on Jacksonville. They're getting a lot of the cash according to the Action app, and just a smidge over 50% of the bets are on the Jags.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is balling. He's hitting those laser throws all over the field. By DVOA, the Jaguars are number 5 in passing offense the last 6 weeks. So they are moving the ball well. They're gonna have to convert in the red zone. That's one spot where they tend to struggle a little bit. So you'll have to hope you get some into the end zone there rather than Trevor throwing it to the other team.
I don't know what they did. Like Derrick Henry was absolutely stomping them in the first half, and then the second half, whatever adjustment they made, like completely shut them down. And
Trayvon Walker.
I don't want to say the Titans or the Cowboys, but they're both run first. They both have legit defense that bring pressure, and the Jags took care of business last week. And I think they can again, especially at home. But when the Jags are home, I always look who they're playing because it's just weird.
You just wish you were there, Luke, don't you?
Yeah.
This might be the first game. This might be the first game with Dak coming back where he is not at plus odds as well to throw an interception. And I'd still probably consider it. He's thrown an interception in every game this season. So, and he's the most profitable quarterback right now to throw interceptions. It pains my heart to even say it out loud, but yeah, it almost seems like free money now to take Dak interception props.
Cowboys have played no one really, just like cakewalk. We're like, their toughest game have been divisional games, which they know those teams better than anyone else. The last 3 opponents they had, Texans, Colts, and Giants.
And they covered in 2 of them. Giants backdoored them Thanksgiving. Indy 33-0 in the fourth quarter. That was a 2-point game through 3. So that was a close game. The score doesn't tell you how close that game was. And the Texans hung in there. Davis Mills had one of his better games.
Yeah.
So how convinced are you how well they've played? And now they got to go on the road for the first time in a month. So I like it. Good deal. Okay, before we go, let's wrap the show with a quick look at next week's lines, week 16. We call this the Lookahead line to see if we like any numbers now before they adjust after Sunday. Brandon, what do you have for us?
Well, it's Christmas weekend. We got most of the games on Christmas Eve on Saturday, but let's get you an early Christmas Day present. I'm going to take the first game of the day on Sunday, go into Miami, and I'm going to fade the Dolphins. I'm going to grab the Packers +4 on the road in Miami. So look, the Packers obviously have disappointed this season. We know that. 2 big flaws on the team. Well, look, we know Rodgers hasn't been what we wanted. The receivers haven't been what we wanted. The big flaws is Green Bay's run defense and their special teams, both terrible. Well, look at Miami, dead last in special teams, one of the few teams worse than Green Bay, and Miami cannot and will not run the football. What Green Bay can do is defend the pass. They're 6th against the pass by DVOA. And, you know, Gilles talked earlier about Miami is struggling. They are struggling to move the ball right now. I expect them to struggle in the snow in Buffalo. I think they're going to continue to look bad there. Teams are jamming those speed receivers. They're covering up the middle of the field. And we're starting to see some copycat here. That's what Staley started to do last week as well. So I think these teams are pretty evenly matched up. I think the Packers are actually maybe a little bit more balanced, more built for late season football. We're in Miami, so we don't really have to worry about any snow or winter weather effects here. And then +4. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers as over a field goal underdog, 14-9 against the spread when he's over 3 points underdog. But more recently, Rodgers has covered 8 of the last 9 games when he's over a 3-point underdog. He won 7 of those games outright. So this is a great spot for him. We're getting the points. I'm not sure it's going to be above 4 if you wait around. Matt LaFleur, 12-4 against the spread as an underdog, 9-1 ATS when it's over a 3-point underdog spot. And Miami, even when they do win games, they're not really blowing teams out usually. 4 of their 8 wins did not cover this line. So we could even just lose by a field goal, still get the cover here. Packers, Monday night this week, home against the Rams. That's probably a blowout. We're going to be like, hey, Green Bay, playoff push? Are they around?
They got to win out. Yeah, but
they do. And a little spoiler here, my Friday Futures column this week, I probably will be writing about Miami to miss the playoffs. And I hate to do it, Green Bay to make the playoffs. Well, if that's going to happen for either of them or both, certainly I need the game to go one direction on this one. Packers +4. I don't think that it will be on that side of the key number by the end of the weekend.
And you're on the same side as Jill. He gave out Bills -7. If you think Miami doesn't handle their business, that's a great call. And this is just, I know it's not quite the NBA on Christmas, but is Aaron Rodgers not going to play on Christmas Day? Like that just, because I was only going to bring up, what if Jordan Love was inserted, but I don't know, big spot, standalone game, not quite a standalone game. Well, it will be the only game going on. So I guess it is a standalone game.
Well, that's
Aaron
the thing.
Rodgers is going to sit out Christmas Day.
Yeah, I liked the spot, but I was like, man, I also, my last cut for the pod today was I looked at taking the Packers -6.5 Monday against the Rams. I like that spot a lot, but I was like, man, if only I knew Green Bay actually cared, I'd like it better. Well, here's the thing to watch. I talked about Seattle Island. If the Seahawks lose by the time you listen to this, the NFC playoff picture really opens up. And I looked ahead at all the matchups. If Seattle loses and Green Bay wins out, we got a Week 18 Green Bay-Detroit matchup that I think has a pretty good chance of effectively being a play-in game. If Seattle loses, Green Bay will have every motivation to beat up on the Rams and then go to Miami and keep the wins going, because Aaron Rodgers is always going to believe that he has a chance of the playoffs. So I think they will be motivated, and I expect him to play here.
He doesn't fear death anymore either.
Yes. That's a great way to wrap up. Well, we'll have the holiday version next week on Thursday, December 22nd. We'll record then and have it out a few days before Christmas. So let's recap the picks, then we'll get the heck out of here. Brandon is on Pittsburgh +3. This is for week 15, everybody. Pittsburgh +3, Baltimore +3, and he's on the Giants and Commanders under 40.5 Sunday night. Jill likes the Bills Saturday -7. Also on the Bengals -3.5 at Tampa, and Denver, Arizona under 36.5. I have to chuckle. That number's just so low, but it's not quite Christmas Day low. And then Luke is on Colts +4.5. Jets +1, hosting the Lions, and Jaguars home dogs against the Dallas Cowboys +4.5. That'll do it here on the Action Network podcast for our NFL Week 15 Best Bets episode. This podcast, of course, sponsored by FanDuel. Thanks to Brandon Anderson, Luke Swain, Joe Gallant, Brendan Glasheen. See you folks later. We have the recap coming Monday from Brandon and Jill. I'm going to Vegas later today, so I can't wait to go in and put these picks in and watch us crush it, meaning you guys. I say us when we do well. That's it, fellas. Thanks so much. Thanks to everyone who listened, and we'll catch you next week.